Hello, everybody. This is Jyotsna Ramachandran, the founder and CEO of Happy Self Publishing. Welcome to this show of Authors Success Show. In this episode, we have a very special guest. We have Trav Bell with us. You may know him as the Bucketlist guy. He is a professional speaker, a TEDx thought leader, a coach, and the author of this amazing book called My Bucketlist Blueprint. Welcome to the show, Trav.
Jyotsna, very, very happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
It's a huge privilege for me, Trav. As I was telling you in the pre-interview chat, I've been following your work for 10 years, and it's like a dream come true to actually meet you.
Oh, wow. That's hopefully I don't disappoint you then.
Oh, not at all. So
no, thank you. Thank you for following me. Thank you for having me on the show. Yeah, if I can add as much value as I possibly can in the time that we've got, that'll make me happy.
Sure. So when did you actually discover that your passion is to help others discover their bucket list?
Well, it kind of, the whole journey started about 10 years ago. So I think you deserve a medal. I did personal fitness training for 20 years prior to that. I'm 48 now. And so for the first 20 years, straight out of university, I started personal fitness training. I was one of the first personal trainers sort of running around here in Melbourne, Australia, and I grew that from one client up to tens of thousands of clients with a chain of personal training studios, franchise personal training studios around Australia. Helped tens of thousands of clients, over 2 million personal training sessions, and I've always had a love for helping people. But I went through some mental health challenges myself through depression, albeit mild. And I had a time in my life where it was a bit of a breakdown before breakthrough. I mean, all your authors, I'm sure that a lot of your authors, and I know from speakers and any other thought leaders that are out there, everyone's got a breakdown before breakthrough story, but whether they learn from it and then maybe package up their learnings to then get them out there in the world, that's another thing, right?
Right.
So for me, I was in a bit of a downward spiral, but instead of going on heavy antidepressants, which is like a Band-Aid effect, I decided to really force myself into personal development, learn out all about NLP, positive psychology, law of attraction, all this sort of stuff. And it was about a year and a half. I'd worked through a lot of the stuff and worked on my own psychology. And a friend of mine said, hey, why don't you teach this stuff? And so I then put on a talk, packaged in everything that I'd learnt. And around that time of doing this first seminar, the whole online world was starting to, fire up. We were going from offline businesses to online. And Tim Ferriss came out with his 4-hour work week book that totally changed my life. And I thought, I had all these gym leases, for gyms around Australia and, all sort of weighing down on me. And I thought, God, I'd love to run a business online, from a hammock in like Chennai, or in Thailand or anywhere else. But I thought that, that really had a sense of freedom around it for me, and it still does. And so I put on a talk, and speaking at the time was the big domino. Now on reflection, was the big domino that I felt that I had to push over at that point in my life, that pushed over a lot of other, that sort of paved the way for a lot of other things in my life. And so I put on a talk about halfway through. This is again about 10 years ago. A friend of someone in the audience, about halfway through the seminar there, I started sharing my list to do before I die. I always had one written down since I was 18. Not a lot of people knew this about me.
Right.
And so this is only 10 years ago. I've had it for the majority of my life. And I said to the room of about 40 people, who else has got one of these lists to do before you die actually written down, like out of your head and actually written down? And I realised I was the only freak in the room. So I put on and it really inspired the group. And at the end of it, Joe, one of the participants there at the time, said, how's the list to do before you die stuff? It's like a bucket list. You're like the bucket list guy. I went,
somebody told you that. Okay.
User-generated content, right? And that night I went home and registered thebucketlistguy.com. But Josna, I took it one step further after I registered the bucketlistguide.com. I was like, who's like the king of bucket lists in the world? Who's like, the expert? It's like, oh, no one. So I called myself the world's #1 bucket list expert because no one else was doing it. So, if you're going to throw yourself in the deep water, learn how to swim. So that's what I did. And now you're speaking to the world's #1 bucket list expert purely because he called himself that.
This is so amazing because you owned that space, right, Trav? And that was very early on. You did not do 100 seminars on creating a bucket list and then decided that I will,
Yeah.
wear this hat of being the #1 in this. But
Well,
you decided that let me just go ahead and package my expertise and give myself this brand moniker called the bucket list
yeah.
guy. So didn't you have
I
any apprehensions about what will people think? Am I really the
totally.
#1?
I didn't know how I was going to monetize it at the start. I had no idea, but it felt right. And one thing I learned in business, and this is hopefully some really good take home for your watchers and listeners, is I mentor a lot of speakers, and I've run speaker mentoring programs for people that want to, maybe authors who will get their message and they want to speak, because that's a great way to sell books.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I think it's an extension of what an author should do, especially in the thought leadership space. But someone said to me years ago, I don't know who it was, but go an inch wide, and a mile deep with your thought leadership.
Right.
Instead of an inch deep and a mile wide and trying to be everything to everyone, right? And you probably tell your authors that all the time. Don't try and be everything to everyone. Stick to. So my philosophy is, pick a highway, then pick a lane, and then own the freaking lane. And honestly, with around that time, so I could have been the fears guy, the gratitude guy. I could have been the beliefs guy or the whatever, because I love human psychology and I love that motivation speaker kind of thing, even though I don't like being called that. But I just love that personal development side of things. But I wasn't going to talk about leadership. I wasn't going to talk about it. I wanted to talk about personal development. If you're not Tony Robbins, you've got to, create some sort of niche there. And so I've always encouraged people to do somewhat of the same. Pick a highway, then pick a lane, and then just own the lane, and that makes for a lot easier. A lot easier to market as well. And I literally heard this, right? Subway, Subway franchises with the sandwiches, their #1 marketing campaign is to open up as close to McDonald's as possible. That's it. That's it. To be the healthy alternative. So I figure, and around that time, social media was really starting to, steamroll and get bigger and bigger. And I figure that not having a lot of money at that point in time, because I defranchised my whole business at that time too. I got rid of all the personal training studios, got them to rebrand, and there was some legal stuff I had to deal with. So I wasn't left with a heap of money, but I had this idea of bucket list and this thing called social media.
Right.
So if I figured I'm going to Subway this, every time the word bucket list is mentioned, I want my name to be as close to that thing as possible.
Yeah.
That's it. So I just went crazy and just bucket list, and no one can stop me.
Exactly.
So
You decided that I'm going to be this, and you stuck to it.
Yeah. Plus, I think it's really important to be congruent with the message, congruent with your brand, as you know. And so bucket list for me is something that that I live and breathe. It is my life since I was 18.
You. Yeah.
It is me. So I think it's really important to work out your own values. So my values is, healthy, helping others, family, of course, and a sense of fun and adventure. And bucket list for me encapsulated all of that stuff. And plus, it gave me license to run around the world and do stupid stuff and write it off as a tax deduction. So,
Amazing.
um,
This is
but
actually one
it
of
really
our
has,
core.
it really does encapsulate who I am
Yeah.
and the kind of filter that I put all of my thought leadership out there in through into the world through. So that's what bucket list is. So I've stayed
Yeah.
on that path for 10 years, and it, I don't know too many other people that have stayed the path and put
Stuck
the
to it. Yeah.
blinkers on. So
Yeah.
I could have talked about a whole heap of different things. I've run two pretty good businesses, and I could have run done all sorts of different books and whatnot, and talked about any sort of subject.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, bucket list is where my heart is.
This is so amazing because a lot of authors, when they're just starting out, they ask this question: should I have my domain name, my website with my name, like travbell.com, or should I go
Yeah,
with what I'm teaching? And this is
yeah. Now
such,
that's interesting.
what's your recommendation for such people?
Yeah, look, I I went through the bucketlistguy.com, and I purposely called myself the bucketlistguy.com because there can only be one the, right? And it's not just bucketlistguy.com, it's the
That bucket list.
bucketlistguy.com.
Hmm.
And then I've protected all that intellectual property and the domain name, and if someone comes close to it, I send my lawyers after them. But at the end of the day, um, I felt because I got ripped off in my personal training, franchise. Someone took my intellectual property and then
Hmm.
started another business, and I was really sour. And that helped me sort of make decisions, and it helped me undo what I'd created. So if I haven't talked about this much, but if I called myself the number one, the bucket list guy, then the world's number one. No one can take that away from me.
Right.
And so and pre-internet, the likes of Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, Les Brown,
Hmm.
Brian Tracy, a whole raft of all these sort of personal development, Dr. John DeMartini. There's a
Hmm.
heap of them, right?
Yeah.
They've got so much intellectual property and so much personal brand out there in the world pre-internet that I figured at that point in time, it's quite interesting that I'd get more attention by being the bucket list guy than just travbell.com.
Correct.
And I've been asked this question a few times, and whether I'd go back to travbell.com or not. I'd only go back to travbell.com if I got sick of the bucket list way of putting myself out there in the world. And I have danced with it, oscillated between the two over the
Hmm.
years, but the bucket list guy is still
Right.
where my heart is at. And case in point, case in point, that I can walk into a room now and they go, bucket, there he is, the bucket list guy, and I'm like, they don't even know my name. So it's like, and
So your personal
but
brand is bigger than your name right now.
yeah, that's it. And I'll give you an example of how this really pays off. So 3 or 4 years ago, I was invited to do a keynote presentation for Action Coach, which is a big global business coaching franchise.
Hmm.
1,500 coaches worldwide in about 70 countries down there in South Africa. They asked me to go down there and deliver a bucket list message to and they're all business coaches, very, very well-to-do business coaches. I did a good job. At the end of it, Brad, the founder, CEO, said, Trav, have you ever thought about licensing out what you do?
Hmm.
Allowing other people to teach you stuff. And I'm like, no, this is what makes me special. I went into scarcity mode. This is what makes me special. Stuff from no one's going to steal this from me. And he's like, you can help more people this way. You know that you can scale it out and help more people. You don't have to give them everything, but you can certainly help more people.
Mm.
Have a think about it, and then if you want to do something, let's put it together. So, long story short, I have a thought about it. Have a think about the bigger vision of helping even more people. Because there's one thing about me, um, Josna, is the fact that I'm not, I want to live my life helping as many people as possible. I'm not happy just helping a couple of handfuls of people. I want to
Right.
change the narrative. I change the conversation, give
Mm.
people, especially youth, teenagers, give them tools that they can really use in their life. And so I made a decision. I flew over to Las Vegas, sat down with Brad at his office, and I said, let's do this. And so at January 2018, we launched a certified bucket list coach. So now we've got certified bucket list coaches teaching my stuff, my IP, in like 22 countries around the world now.
Wow.
And so if I hadn't stayed the path of being the bucket list guy, that would have obviously, that brand would have been watered down. I might not have even got the invitation to speak in the first place.
Right. So I think it's nice to um, not be so attached that only you can do this. But if your goal is to actually reach out to more people and serve more people, uh, franchising and licensing could be such great
Yeah.
avenues to not just grow your brand, but to also expand that message.
Well, I think it's, like I know that look, the brand and the thought leadership that goes along with it morphs and changes over the year. And, for me, it's becoming more about positive psychology, more philosophical, which is what I love to talk about. I love to write. I love to write. And even though I've written this book, I'm halfway through my second, and it's getting deeper and deeper and deeper, which is what I love. And I really enjoy the process of writing now. It's funny that, after you get your first one, the weight's off your shoulders and you're a lot freer. And now I'm writing a lot freer.
Wow.
And I'm like, where is this piece of me been all these years? It took me 10 years to put this one together.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this, I'm holding up my book, the My Bucket List Blueprint. It's taken me 10 years. It's not even a centimetre thick. It's kind of pathetic, to be honest. But once you've got that one out of the way, once you've got your first one out of the way, and I'm sure you can help people do that, it's amazing. It just frees up your headspace to be a lot more creative.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the scaling and the leverage of the bucket list message is really what it's all about. It's less about me, more about we now. It forces you into or forced me and my team now into a bigger vision beyond me. It's now a bigger mission beyond me, and also a legacy play. I want to leave a legacy now, which is obviously part of my bucket list.
Right.
Leave a legacy that changes, can really help. Maybe combat or change the narrative around some of these scary mental health stats.
Sure.
Because
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, I did a presentation. This is, one of my reminders that I did a presentation just on Friday, just gone, and it was to a room full of policemen, senior policemen. I had this one policeman come up. It was like, felt like he was 10 foot tall, and he was come up with his wife, big burly guy, and he was crying. And he cornered me in the room right after, and he said, "Oh, I've been going through depression. Your stuff is just unbelievable. It's exactly what I need to hear." And he was just like, I said, "Mate, I'm a cop, and can I have a hug?" I said, "Dude, come here." And we hugged it out, and you could just feel that what I said really made an impact. And his wife's absolutely losing it as well. And so that was a really good reminder. A really good reminder of my why, of why I do it,
Bigger
and why
purpose.
I want to scale it out. And what's really cool is the fact that, now my coaches, around the world in, different countries are now getting that same kind of feedback. And that's when you're going, all right, now it doesn't take much to, for me, it doesn't take much more of that positive reinforcement for me to go, all right, let's play a really big game with this thing.
And I think during this pandemic, Trav, people realize more than ever before the importance of having a bucket list and really get serious about ticking the items, because we never know that if we're going to live another 40 years to actually get all those things done.
Oh, look, who knows? And I think that the pandemic has allowed everyone the space to take a big, deep, collective, deep breath in and recalibrate on their
Mm,
lives. You know,
very
people are
true.
starting businesses, starting side hustles. They're getting out of old, out of jobs. Now they work in this hybrid work-life blend kind of new normal that companies and some, especially here in Australia, that are now creating. And it's, the world has been shaken up,
Yeah.
and everyone's redefined what their new normal is going to be. Certainly here in Australia, and for me, it's I've been pretty busy with companies who are now like going, we want our people to be happy. We've had a lot of people, whether it be leave or, not just survive, some have thrived.
Yeah.
And we want to give them some tools to be able to recalibrate and get on with things now. So
Mm.
it's been, yeah, it's been really timely. And that's why the book's gone really well and everything like
Mm.
that. So,
So let's talk a little bit about your book, Trav. Now, you've been an expert in this space for years. So I'm sure thousands of people would have asked you about when are you finally writing your book? So what?
oh, don't even talk about it. I cannot.
No,
I
we need to
cannot
talk
tell
about
you
this.
how much money I've potentially left on the table by me saying at the end of like, oh, I was speaking in front of 2,000, 3,000 people, and a good majority of them was like, oh, where do I buy your book? And I'm
Right.
like, it's coming.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't even. That would be a lot of money. I don't even. It makes me feel sick when I even think about it. So thank you for
Right.
bringing that up. So, but I tell you what, it's like the cool thing about being, and I encourage everyone who's written a book to go out and be a speaker as well.
Hmm.
Maybe that's a joint venture we can do, Josna.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I'm a speaker. You can hear me speaking and talking too much here, but writing and sitting down and actually writing was quite a painful process in terms of procrastination and perfectionism.
Hmm.
Because I didn't want it to be an expensive business card. I wanted it to be something of thought, something that
Value.
actually people use, something that where people can come back and go, all right, the book actually, I actually did the book. I actually went through the book and I paid it forward to my kids. And,
Hmm.
so I wanted to make sure it was a worthwhile extension of my talks. And, but I'll tell you what, just in the short amount of time that I've been going back and doing, presentations, live presentations in the last 3 months or so, every single gig I've sold a heap of books at the end of it. Just, and
Right.
I'll pre-sell the books too. So commercially speaking, it's great because, they might pay me $10,000 for a gig. And then I'll say, okay, well, how about we put a book on everyone's seat, and I'll sign them at the end.
Hmm.
They're normally $30, but we'll do it for 15 or $20 a book. How
Right.
about we do that? And then they pre-buy all these books, put them on
Hmm.
everyone's seat. I sign them at the end, and your gig price has gone from here to here, which is awesome.
Yeah, I
And they
think
get
it is
another
a
piece of you.
mandatory thing for speakers, especially because it's
Yeah.
a huge opportunity that you might have lost all these years. So, finally, now, what actually helped you to write the book? How did you overcome that procrastination?
I'm gonna say something, Jocelyn, that I'll probably never say ever again. Is thank you, COVID. Thank you, lockdowns. Thank
Right.
you, quarantines. Thank you for not allowing me to travel around the world, because at the end of the day, I could not go into 2021. There's just no more excuses.
Right.
And, like I was a kind of forced lockdown help just go, you know what, let's put a bow around this and let's just get it done. And I could seriously write a book on how much I mess with my own mind in getting my own book done. And so I got some help right at the end and just went, let's just get this thing done and ticked off, because it's yeah, it just did my it did it the level of discomfort around it and the level of anxiety not having a book as a speaker,
Yeah.
I just couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
So, I did some big soul searching, but honestly, got it done, and just it was pretty much written, but it was also in terms of priority, because you don't see an immediate flood of money coming in, so it wasn't really an important, like going to a speaking. I'll like, get to the book later.
So it was not an urgent task that you have to finish.
Yeah, it wasn't an urgent one. So for me, it was just a nice to have. And for me, I always saw myself as a speaker first, author second, rather than the other way around. And so that's sort of on par with each other now. So I love writing, and it's been great to tick that off my bucket list, obviously.
So glad that COVID at least helped a lot of authors like you to finally publish that book.
Oh my God! If I can get it, if I can get it done, anyone can. I think I've got a pretty bad case of ADHD. I'm definitely on the spectrum somewhere, and if I can sit down and actually get this thing done, I'm certainly, or your listeners and watchers certainly can.
What I've noticed, Trav, which is pretty funny, is when an expert is new in their space, they don't really have a reputation to safeguard, and they really don't mind putting a book together and publishing it. But if you are in the space for 5 years, 10 years, you have a huge following, that's when that perfection syndrome comes in, and you don't want to let down your followers. You want to be the best.
Oh, totally. Yeah, you're right.
But what actually happens is 2 years later, when you look back at this book, you will definitely feel this could have been better. So that's always going to happen, right? So it's better to get it done sooner than later.
Yeah, a week after it was published, I'm like, I could have done that better. I'm like, let it go, Trav, let it go. But yeah, like it, and the cool thing about it, honestly, I've published it, released it out there, out in the wild, had to let it go and just release it, and people have actually come back and gone, you know what, I want to buy one for my kids for Christmas. It really helped me. It's been a great book, and I'm like, you're just saying that because I don't need the ego trip. I wanted honest feedback, and they're like, no, it's exactly what I wanted, exactly what I needed. Right. All right, good. We're getting positive feedback here. So it's not just an expensive business card just to knock out a book to get, to tick it off. It's actually something of substance. But, like the good thing about the delay, if you can look at the positives, is the fact that I've built up, as you know, a following, a database, social media, all of that. So you go release a book, and I sold a heap of them straight away.
Right.
If I'd started and released a book and then try, I know
it wouldn't have been such a big success.
Garage full of books still. If I had no following.
True. So I'm sure for a lot of people, writing a book is one of the main items on their bucket list. They want to do it someday. So you have a nice system inside your book for getting the things achieved in their bucket list. So for somebody who wants to write a book, what are some of the steps that you would recommend them to do to actually finally get it done?
Contact you.
That's the easiest option, right?
Yeah. Contact you, or look, I think having, maybe if you haven't got the attention span and you can't sit down and write, I got interviewed, which is really handy. So I had someone interview me, and I just went blah blah blah, because I'm a speaker, right? So I can talk all day, especially about my topic, and I really so I spoke, and then someone kind of transcribed it.
I'm so glad you
all my ums and ahs.
I'm so glad that you're honest about talking about this, Trav, because a couple of years ago we launched this as a service. It's called Angel Writing, where we just interview experts, because most speakers and entrepreneurs are busy. They don't want to sit and write, but they can speak very well. So we interview them over a few sessions, record the conversation, listen back, and the angel writer, writes it for them, and boom, the book is, the manuscript is ready.
Yeah, look, I had an idea, like the first the kind of skeleton or the index that I set out was I wanted to, because I've done a TED talk called Life's Too Short by Trav Bell as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of wanted to be, the book, the keynote, the TED talk, all kind of, come together. And
Yeah.
so I knew what the book was going to be about. It's going to be the My Bucket List Blueprint, which is what that is. It's a 12-letter acronym for how to create a personally meaningful and holistic bucket list. So obviously there's going to be 12 chapters. All right. There's my first skeleton. All right. I wanted a story or a couple of stories per chapter. All right. So it's one from me and one from a bucket lister. All right. Now we're starting to flesh it out. So all of the stories that I put in there, so meet my bucket list, which stands for, meet a personal hero, your proud achievement, buy that special something, ultimate challenges, conquer a fear, kind acts for others, express yourself, take lessons, leave a legacy, idiotic stuff, and S, satisfy curiosity, and T, travel adventures, right?
Wow.
So I put in about a 3,000 word story about each one of those signature story, about 3,000 words for each of those letters. Then I went back into my group and got a signature story that represented each one of those. So now we've got kind of 6,000 words per chapter there, and then put an intro and outro and some positive psychology stuff on either end. Few dedications, and off I went. But I had to, for the large majority, I spoke those stories.
I'm also really glad that you got in touch with your community and brought out their stories, because everybody knows that you are the expert in this, but when they actually see other, everyday people achieving results using your system, that actually builds your credibility as well.
Well, funny about that, because, the next book is going to be the My Bucket List Blueprint in action. And it's actually going to have 396. Hang on, how many days in a year? 395. No, 365. Geez, it's getting late. 365 different bucket lists in it that have used the My Bucket List Blueprint from all walks of life. So some very rich people through to very poor, through to middle class, white, black, everyone from different countries, the whole bit. And I wanted a really rich and diverse group of bucket lists from all sorts of different people. So we've got at least one per day that you can be inspired by. And there's some freaky shit that people want to do too. It's great. So, and go deeper on the philosophy, deeper on how to actually action your bucket list. So it's an extension of this, but it's kind of writing itself, because I get sent bucket lists every other day, and how I'm linking this book to the next one is on every person I'm contacting who actually, or every person that buys one, there's actually a link in the back of the book where people can actually send me their bucket list after they've actually done it. So that's actually building itself out as we speak.
So before you published this book, Trav, did you actually decide on how do you measure the success of this book?
The measure of the success? God, look, I've always had the philosophy, if I can sell one, I can sell 1,000. If I can sell one, I can sell 1,000,000. Well, it's just a system. So yeah, I mean, it's exceeded and also not exceeded expectation. What I mean by that, we went to Amazon bestseller in a bunch of different categories, and that's more of an algorithm thing. Look, I think that, and I was number one in I can go around and say, oh, I'm an Amazon bestseller. Yeah, but as you'd probably know, there's a bit of a ninja kind of way to do that, and but no one can take it away from me. I've got the screenshot that actually says it. But that's all well and good. I don't have a real number, but I'm stoked that people have actually sent me their bucket list as a result. They've seen me speak and they want to buy one, and they've given it to their kids, and I've got photos of families around the dining room table, creating a family bucket list as a result, as a result of the framework that I've given them in this book. That's the stuff. I could sell one book and have that, and I'd be stoked. Like as long as I'm making impact with it.
I'm
I
really
get
so
carried away
glad.
with Wall Street Journal and Amazon bestseller and all that, and that's all ego shit. And I'm like, yeah, cool. I get enough of that from the stage, so I don't really need that. But if it's making impact, if it's actually changing people's lives, if it's a tool to help them recalibrate in really negative times such as COVID, then I'm happy, and it's been doing that.
This is such a nice thing that you shared, Trav, because a lot of authors, 3 months, 6 months after becoming published, they feel disappointed that they haven't sold the number of books that they expected they would sell. But I just tell them the exact same thing that you said, like go back and look at the impact that your book has created. Go and read the reviews you've got on Amazon. That will make your day, because I think that's something that we cannot measure in numbers, but that was the real purpose behind writing the book in the first place.
Yeah, I think what we can fall into the trap of, like the book is only part of my overall bucket list ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's not the be all and end all. And let's be honest, if you're expecting to make money out of your book, well, good luck, because it's not going to happen. Don't think that you're Stephen King. You're going out there and so I think it's really important for people watching and listening to think of your business as an ecosystem. What is the ecosystem that you own? Because in that ecosystem, we've got in Bucketlist, we've got obviously the book. I've got the TED Talk, which is a piece of intellectual property. I've got the Bucketlist Coach, which is I've already mentioned. I've got the speeches. We've got merchandise now too.
Nice.
Eat, sleep, tick, repeat. We've got. We're about to launch an app as well. So these are all parts of this ecosystem, and that's all on purpose, because if the book didn't go well, I'm not resting all my goals is not dependent. My success is not dependent on just the book. And a lot of the good authors and a lot of good thought leaders are out there. They've got a lot of different arms to their business, and I think it's and one complements the other.
Right.
For instance, and I do one-on-one coaching and all the rest as well. So, I've got a lady at the moment who got me in to do a keynote talk. This was on Friday. She's bought a bunch of books. She got books for herself, for her family. Beyond the corporate that she was representing. Plus, she wants some private one-on-one coaching, so book, speech, coaching.
Yeah.
And she also knows someone that might want to be a bucket list coach with us too. So if you don't have those sort of offerings out there, but the book might have been, in this case, it was the speech, but in another case, it might be a piece of merchandise that might be the doorway or the entry into our ecosystem. It might be an app, it might be the book, it might be, whatever else. And I think it's really important that people consider that when going out and writing a book. And I think but it also do one at a time.
Yeah,
don't go out there and I'll just
Trav has all this wonderful stuff and I don't have it, so let me do all of this in 6 months. Not happening.
And tomorrow all your authors go out and do freaking t-shirts. It's stupid. So but make sure that these are all items that you like your boat
one by one.
I always give it the analogy of your boat is your database. That's the online commodity that we trade with one another on a day-to-day basis. So our job is to go and create products, free opt-ins, whatever it might be, and that's you casting out of your boat, casting a fishing line with some bait on the end of it to bring people back to your boat. Bring them back to your boat, And are you doing that regularly? You're doing that every day, every month, what's your schedule around that? Some are paid, some are free, but at the end of the day, It's about bringing people back into that boat or that ecosystem that
Yeah.
you can then control.
I
And I
love
think
this boating analogy. We call this at Happy Self Publishing as the author funnel, where somebody gets
yep,
introduced to your ecosystem through your book. That's the doorway. But ultimately, if your work is good and they fall in love with you, they'll end up buying a lot of other things of value, and the
yep,
lifetime value of that one reader could be huge.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
And that's what you got to be really considerate of. It's good that you say that.
Yeah.
You know, I know that if we get them in here and we look after them, and I think one of the best people on the planet at doing that is Grant Cardone. Like, he's an amazing marketer. You know,
Mm.
I went in, I got I bought his 10x rule book, and before you know it, I'm buying his jumper, and I'm going to this conference, and I'm doing this online program, and he's got a
Yeah.
virtual 10x boot camp thing, and I'm like buying that. I'm going, hang on, I started off buying his book. How does this work?
Right.
I think that's it. That's marketing 101 right there.
I think that's every expert's goal, to have all these different components in the ecosystem. So, thank you so much, Trav, for sharing all this wisdom with our listeners and viewers. So, where can people go get your book and learn more about the bucket list?
Yeah, I mean, they can obviously go to Amazon, and Amazon over there is probably like Amazon here. It is what it is. But if people go to thebucketlistguide.com/book, they can grab a book. And I've got my trusty Sharpie here at the ready to sign those books, which I've been doing. And I've done a lot of, which has been absolutely fantastic. So I've been literally shipping them all out myself, signed with a little message in there. And I think, a signed book from an author is better than straight off Amazon, personally.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, they can follow me on social media and just put in the bucket list guy, and they should be able to find me.
Yeah. We'll have all the links in the show notes.
Yeah.
Trav, thank you so much once again for spending your valuable time with us. I usually keep these interviews at 20 minutes long, but then you had so many value bombs to share that I just didn't want this
I'm a
conversation
speaker.
to end.
Remember, I'm a speaker, so I can speak.
Thank you so much, Trav. This is amazing.
Awesome, Jocelyn. Thanks, guys. Cheers.